Yeah, look at all those beautiful faces. And by that, I mean the four of us.
That's the downside. I wish I could see everyone, but
Yeah.
we will be just gazing at ourselves here. Welcome, everyone. I know we can't see you, but it's so good to have you here. I'm gonna make sure that the chat is enabled. So, yep. All right. So you should be able to chat now. Welcome to the info session for the Veterans Writing Project. So great to have you here. I'd love to just do a quick hello. I've seen some other groups have people say hello and then to share what branch of the military they were in. So if you want to drop that in the chat, feel free. But yeah, welcome everyone. So as you all know, tonight we're hosting an info session for the 2025 to 2026 cycle of the Veterans Writing Project. I'm going to dive in at the beginning with just some basics about the program, what to expect, key dates, and our wonderful panelists will be contributing throughout. I think first, before I get into explaining what the foundation does and what the program is, I'd love to do a quick go around with our panelists. If you want to introduce yourself, maybe Nicole, you can start.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So glad to have you here. I'm Nicole Schwegman, and I'm a retired Navy commander. I went to the Naval Academy, graduated, and for the first 4 years drove ships, and then transferred over to public affairs, where I got a chance to run the National Navy News Desk, worked at the Department of Defense for the Secretary of Defense as one of the traveling press folks and also got to work at the White House, the National Security Council is one of the press people there. And then came time for me to decide if I wanted to keep going or if I wanted to retire. And I decided to retire because I really wanted to tell stories. And I was initially a part of the 2023-2024 Veterans Writing Project cohort. And then I got into the first fellowship cohort for the Veterans Writing Fellowship last year, 2024, and completed that. And now a showrunner's assistant. And I've also been able to pitch a TV show. So looking forward to answering your questions. And this is a great program. And I'm really appreciative to this program. And I'm looking forward to sharing all the great things that I've learned and have experienced while being part of it.
Harsha, you want to jump in?
Yeah, unlike Nicole, I was in the Army, so I was actually in the military. I was a captain in the U.S. Army. Spent a year deployed in Iraq. I was part of this program in 2018 to 2019, which I think was Kira's first year as well when she took over from Libby. I actually didn't finish the program because I was fortunate enough to get into the Universal Writers Project kind of near the end of the program. And the way I got into it was because the folks from the Universal Writers Project actually came to the Veterans Writer Project, did a presentation, said we should apply. I was apparently the only one who applied from the program. And so by default, I suppose, I got in. But that kind of got me representation. I was able to sell a few projects. I got into the Writers Guild a few years ago. Went out of work like all of us did a few years ago as well. And I've had the fortunate situation of being able to come back to this program as a mentor now, which has been just really great working with everybody. Great to see all of you here. Great to see my man Bill Harcum. I saw that name pop in. Great to see you again. I'll hand it over to Travis.
Cool. Saved the worst for last. So I'm Coast Guard, barely qualified to be here, but cool. No, I did 5 years in the Coast Guard. I did a lot of search and rescue operations along the coast of California. Then I got into this program in 2020, 2021. After that, I went on to get my MFA from CSUN over here, and now I work with Kira at the Writers Guild Foundation with this program and stuff. So yeah, I do a lot of like freelance writing and stuff in the nerdy realm. I write a lot of weird things. So I'm not as impressive or cool. I'm just here.
Oh, stop it.
We
Yes.
all think you're impressive and cool.
Thanks.
I realized before I handed it off to everyone, I didn't even introduce myself, but I'm Kira. I'm the Director of Community Programs at the Writers Guild Foundation. So I oversee this program along with several others that I'll mention in some capacity as we get going. But Yeah, excited to have everyone. I'm going to quickly share my screen for a portion of this just so you can all see this information as we run through it. Give me one moment. Good. Everyone can see. I guess I'm asking the panelists, but I'm assuming it all
Yes.
looks good. Um, great. So just to get it started, I wanted to give an overview of the foundation, what it does. So the foundation is a nonprofit organization that is closely tied in with, but not explicitly a part of the guild. So we work very closely with the guild. Our mentors are guild members, and we operate out of the guild building. But we are an independent nonprofit. And our mission statement is that we are dedicated to preserving and promoting the craft of writing for the screen, which obviously encompasses a lot. We have very many different ways people tend to engage with the foundation. Some of you may have visited our library, our script library in person. It's open to the public by appointment, located at 3rd and Fairfax in Los Angeles, and it's the only script library in the world that is focused on film and television. We have over 45,000 scripts and other materials on hand, as well as an archive with some really special stuff in it. We host public events and workshops, and of course, our community programs that we're going to be talking about one of those today. And then we also offer a lot of online resources in our resource center. So that is the foundation, broadly speaking. And then specifically, my territory is the community programs. As you can see, there's several main ones that I oversee. Tonight, we'll be talking about the Veterans Writing Project. So zeroing in on exactly what that is, the program was established in 2010 it's evolved a lot over time. So it hasn't always been as intensive or as long as it is now. As many of you have seen, it's around 8 to 9 months at this point in its evolution. But originally it was just something small established by guild members, and it's grown into what it is today. But as you know, the mission is to provide emerging writers with U.S. military backgrounds with tools, education, training, mentorship, all with the goal of nurturing their passion for writing and navigating the entertainment industry as it exists today. So a big part of the program is that we focus on the craft over the actual product that you come out with. So let me see if I have a slide here, or I'll just go back. A big part of this program is giving everyone the fundamentals to actually create a script, write your story from start to finish. Not so much about, coming out with the final script itself, but really understanding the fundamentals of writing. So I want us to get started with a quick timeline overview. I'll be sure to review all this at the end. And I also, just a few housekeeping notes. We are going to offer plenty of time for Q&A. There's going to be a Q&A button that's in the toolbar. You'll probably see at the bottom of your screen, like somewhere just right on the toolbar. You can click that and submit your questions for Q&A. We probably will answer a lot of the basic questions in the next 20 to 30 minutes, but if we haven't answered your question at a certain point, yeah, definitely drop in the Q&A box. Just to give you an idea what we will be covering, we're going to go over timeline, the program structure, how it works, eligibility, application requirements, and then advice we have for applicants. So maybe just sit tight if you have a question about those things, and then drop it in the chat if we don't get to it. But first point I want to go over is the timeline. I'm also dropping the links in the chat if you want to see our FAQs as we go. So the program, it kicks off around late June. So we're going to start with our application process next week, February 12th. That's when applications open. It's going to remain open for just a bit over a month. And so they'll close on March 16th. That's going to be end of day. So basically midnight, 11:59 on March 16th. I like to specify that because we do in fact get applicants who submit at 11:59 p.m., which is very bold and brave, but I would recommend applying early if possible. So keep that date in mind. In that time between the decisions being sent and the applications closing, we have a committee who's going to be reviewing all the applications. It's usually made up of mentors and alumni and staff. So by the time we finish, we should be able to notify everyone of their status. I believe the date we put on the website was May 10th, so that's going to be the final date, but you can expect sometime between in early May. It could be anywhere between like the first to second week of May. And I should also mention everybody will receive an email update. So even if you're not admitted this cycle, you're still going to hear from us with a final confirmation. After the decisions are sent, if you're admitted, the kickoff retreat, that's going to be in June, and then we're going to move into the extended program from July to March, so about around 8 to 9 months. As far as the breakdown of what the actual program looks like once you're admitted, the kickoff weekend retreat, like I mentioned, that's going to be in late June. We're looking at the last 2 weekends of June just for reference, but there's still some pieces that have to come together before it's confirmed. The retreat is going to be a Saturday and a Sunday, so 2 days, and it's usually all day. And one important note is that this is in person. So keep that in mind. It's a requirement for applying. It's that everyone comes to the retreat in person unless there's some serious extenuating circumstances. I think, do I have additional? Yeah. So here's a quick rundown of what the actual program looks like. Kickoff weekend retreat. Like I said, late June, last 2 weekends. It's a full day. This one's in person. After that, we move into the weekly sessions. Those are typically around 10 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks overall. And these are on Zoom. So if you're not located in LA, you still can participate in all the meetings virtually. In fact, we tend to host all meetings virtually. There's a small chance there'll be some quarterly meetings that we do in person, but for the most part, since COVID, this program's been virtual, excluding a couple major events throughout the year. But like I said, really the only one that we really ask people to attend in person is that kickoff weekend retreat. Everything after that is going to be mostly virtual. We meet Tuesday evenings. For the basic course, it's weekly, every Tuesday, 7 to 10. And then after the basic course wraps up, we meet every other week on Zoom. And same time frame, 7 to 10 p.m. Pacific, which I know can be tough for some folks with their, depending on what time zone they're in. Let's see, I think we're now moving into, yeah, mentorship groups. I want to get our panelists in on this next section, but just to give you a quick overview, mentorship groups, we curate our matches for the mentors and mentees based on your responses from a welcome survey that comes after you're admitted. So again, something we can get into a little bit later, but for context, everyone within the program is going to be placed into a breakout group within the larger context of the program. So around 35 to 45 students will be selected for the cycle, but from that group, everyone's going to be split into smaller breakout groups. Within that group, you'd be working with around 4 other mentees, 3 to 4 other mentees. You'd have 2 to 3 mentors. Again, these are WGA members who you'd be working with, and around 2 to 3 volunteers who are alumni from the program. So this gives you like a really nuanced understanding of, you know, the lessons, because you get a breakout and go over it with your mentors, and they'll actually be working with you to develop a complete TV pilot or feature script over the course of the program. I wanted to jump into just going over how the breakout groups work and also touch on the actual structure of the program. So I think maybe we'll just start with the program and then work our way up to the mentorship. So to our panelists, I was curious if you could speak more on like your experience with the overall objective of the program, like what it was like from start to finish for you, and kind of how the flow was throughout the year.
I'll go first. So I want to like really foot stomp that I think it's important to try to attend the in-person session. Um, that really set the tone for our mentor group going forward. You for the most part will do this on Zoom. So you don't get to spend a lot of time with them in person. So I think it's really important to spend time getting to know them. This is where they kind of vet your ideas in the beginning. And you figure out like, okay, yeah, this works or this doesn't. And it just gives you that personal connection. So we did that. And then you spend the first 10 weeks, like the slide said, going through the basics. Now, for some people, this will feel like review. If you've got a kid incoming. That's too funny. Like it will feel like review. Like if you've gone through a screenwriting program or you have a degree in screenwriting, that's it will feel like review, but I would still encourage you to pay attention because um even though it might be a review for you, every mentor, like the mentors do the teaching, like Harsha will do one of the teachings, I think. Like even then, you will still learn something. Like I had taken screenwriting courses, but I still learn new things from each of the mentors and how they develop character or come up with story. So don't think of it as a review, just think of it as another way that someone's teaching you. And then in addition to that, each week after those sessions, you will also spend time in your individual mentor groups talking to everyone. And I think I found that to be one of the most valuable things because one, I got feedback on my ideas in real time. And it kind of helped put me on the right path. So I didn't spend a lot of time, I don't want to say wasting time, but it helped me to get on the story path because you don't have that much time actually to write the script and get it done. It helped me to get on the right story path and it helped me to develop my own process so that when now that I'm writing on my own, I still go back to the process that I learned in this program.
Yeah, I can jump in on the mentor side. So yeah, just to double down what Nicole said, the basic purpose is you're gonna have a kickoff weekend, right? You're gonna meet your mentors, people who are actual working WGA writers who are taking time out of their schedule to read your stuff from the very short pitch statements all the way up to actual full-length feature films, which takes time. You have a 120-page script, right? It's gonna take you at least 2 hours to read. And then probably like another half an hour to an hour to actually have really good, meaningful notes onto it, right? And so the mentors are taking the time out to give you some really great feedback, which is awesome and the best part of this program. And so yeah, you want to meet them in the kickoff meeting. We can get to know them, right? Then throughout the course, there's going to be lessons on craft, right? And Nicole's saying it in a very nice way. Don't be offended if you know it is a review, right? Full stop. Every single person who's going through this program needs to develop their craft, right? And no one thinks they do. When I came through, I thought it was, oh, I'm so good at writing. And now looking back, I'm like, no, I was freaking terrible. I needed to develop my craft. And so take this as an opportunity to develop your craft and to get really good, meaningful feedback from your mentors who have gone through some type of process like this before and can, really steer you away from pitfalls and help uplevel your writing in an excellent way if you listen and apply yourself, right? And so I think it's a really great program, but you're going to get out of it what you put into it. And so if you come in and you're late on your assignments, you're not putting your full self into it, you're not going to improve as much as you could, right? And to make it in this town, unfortunately, you just have to be just like hyper focused on developing your craft and making yourself a better and better writer. Because, once you come into, if you come in trying to make it as a screenwriter in LA, you're not competing against like, the other people on this call. You're not competing against like people like, Nicole or Travis or me, right? You're competing against the top level people in this town. Right. You will be going against John Spates, who wrote Dune 2, right? You will be going against gosh, I'm totally forgetting his name. The guy, never mind. He came and spoke to us 6 years ago. I've already forgotten his name. But you'll be competing against all the great writers who are out there. And so you've got to build your craft up enough to be able to compete with them, not with your peers. And this is a really great program to help you get to that level.
Yeah, I have very little to add. The mentorship component is amazing, and I went like the total opposite route. I did this program, then an MFA, and it wound up being like a totally opposite thing for me, where everything I felt I learned about screenwriting came from the program rather than the MFA. Because it's one thing to read 1,001 books about screenwriting, and it's one thing to watch a bunch of master classes and that sort of thing, and it's a totally different thing to practically work with a mentor to figure out what you are doing wrong and what you're doing right, and to figure out how to practically apply everything that you can learn about screenwriting from all of those different academic places. So for me, the big difference in all of it was just the direct hands-on application that the mentors were able to apply for me, because they are working Hollywood screenwriters, and it's really amazing to like get that direct knowledge of how this works, not from just an artistic standpoint, but from a business. Being able to separate yourself like from the idea of being an artist and looking at yourself more as a craftsperson was something I got from the program. So really, I think this just prepared me more to be a professional writer, and hopefully when the opportunity comes, I'll be ready. We'll see.
Thanks all. Yeah, great responses. I know that covered a lot in regards to the mentorship and the actual goals of the program. I do want to reemphasize something that everyone mentioned. It really is giving you the tools you need to be able to replicate this in the future. So you're not coming in here with one single idea that you're absolutely connected to, you've already written it or you want to workshop it. That's not the purpose. It's really to get through the entire, from idea to final product, the entire evolution of what it takes to write a script. So it is a lot of work, of course. It's a big time commitment, so it's something else to keep in mind. Before we jump into the actual applications and eligibility, I just want to see if anyone has more insight into the mentor relationship, what it's like between mentors and mentees, establishing a good relationship with your mentor, and kind of what to focus on.
I'll add this. So look, I did like a 20-year career in the military, and I mean, I was used to like people worked for me, and I was used to being in charge. But I would say that, whether you did 2 years or you're a colonel or an admiral, whatever, right? When you come to this program, you're like, it's time to go back to being a follower and, a trainee. And I say that where you want to come in kind of humble, right? Because just like Arsha and Travis have said, like these are working screenwriters, like they get no money, like no money to do this, right? And they're giving time, which essentially they could be using to write scripts that could make them money. And instead, they're reading your script. Someone always told me once, like, nobody wants to read your stuff, okay? And that is so incredibly true. Nobody wants to read your stuff. So the fact that they're freely coming in, they get nothing out of this other than the warm fuzzy of helping friends, right? Like, I would just say if you get in, right, like you're going to work with some like pretty famous and amazing people who are all working writers. So, and I say this only just in the past, like having had folks like that, you want to come in as humble as you can and learn from them. Even if you don't always agree with their notes, even if you don't always agree with their approach, just remember they could be like staring at the wall or hanging out with their kids or writing more stuff to pitch, right? To outwork you. Instead, they're giving their free time, and it's often their free time because you'll find that like um, one of the guys who was my mentors, he was literally running a show and he still would like in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m, read our scripts and give us like detailed notes. And he's a showrunner. In fact, I work for him now, but he did that on his free time. And so I'll never get that because I know that I know how grumpy I am getting up in the middle of the night to do something. So just remember that these are guys giving you things. Sorry to harp on that so much, but it really is important because it's also not just like they're giving you time. This is an audition, right? Like the script you write is not as important as how you act while you write that script. Let me just put it that way. These are going to be your peers and your colleagues going forward in the future. So how you act now is it's a small community, right? The writers community is a small community and word gets around. So this first impression when you get in, that is your impression for your career going forward. So just remember that. I'll end with this. I once had a mentor in the military who got out, he retired, and he told me, you get one chance after you get out to remake your career and to remake your yourself. So choose wisely. So if you're gonna be like a writer, just know this is your first entrance, whether you sell something or not, into the writers community, and we will remember you. Good or bad, we'll remember you.
Yeah, to double click on what Nicole said, keep yourself open to receiving feedback. It is difficult to, spend all this time and effort on your baby and then to come out and have experienced writer just tear it to shreds in a polite, nice way, right? It's hurtful for everybody at every level, right? And so just keep that in mind that when we're doing that, the goal is not to make you feel small, but to, get your work as powerful as it can be. And so the folks who do really well are the people who keep themselves open to feedback and try and implement it. You don't if you're spending your time fighting with the mentors, right, and trying to push back against all the suggestions, you're generally wasting time, right? Because at a certain point, a mentor is going to know more than you, right? And we're going to, start losing the level of interest, right? If you're not willing to take feedback. And, if I'm spending all my time trying to convince you why it is important to have like an inciting incident by page 15 or 20 instead of page 35, I mean, look, man, at that point, it's like, you've wasted time where you could be getting actual valuable content feedback on just getting into a random fight. And so I'd say just really keep a strong focus on, trying to keep yourself open to getting that good feedback and implementing it and changing your script to make it stronger. Remember, you can always keep your own version of the screenplay, right? Where you don't make any changes and you just make one version for this program and one that's fully your own, right? No one's saying that you can't do that, but when in the program, try to make the most of your mentor's time. Yeah, and let me hand over to Travis if he has anything.
Yeah,
Shake.
I would just easy enough. I mean, it's just important to remember that for many people, this is your only chance to make an impression in the industry. It's a very, very small town, and most screenwriters know pretty much everyone. And being able to sit at the table with all these people is incredible. But your writing can speak for itself, but it basically never will. They're going to remember much more how you treated them and how you handled taking that feedback and stuff and really listening to it. I think the people I've seen fall apart for the most part tend to be very argumentative with the mentors because they're just not getting it, and they tend to put the impetus of like the understanding of their work on the mentors, and that's not always the case. If your mentors are not understanding your work, then maybe there's a problem on the page. You need to sit down and understand. Just like Nicole said, it's all about humility. Just remember, like, you're coming here to learn from these people who are doing the job, and they're there to guide you from beginning to end on how the professional screenwriting process works. And if you can separate your own ego and everything, and remember, feedback on your story is not feedback on you as a person, you're gonna have a great time. And your mentors will remember you. Even years out from the program, mentors who no longer are part of things, like we still talk. All of us do. It's a pretty great community, and you don't want to have a not great reputation in it. That's all I'll say. Sorry.
Great, thank you all. Yeah, great advice. I hope you all keep that in mind moving forward. I know folks are eager to get to the actual application FAQs, so I'm going to start with a quick overview of just eligibility, like who can apply, what do we ask for when we're applying, and then we'll dive into specific advice for applicants, as well as diving into like what makes your personal statement strong and your writing sample and all of that. But just to give you a start, sorry, pulling up this sharing again. All right. So starting off, eligibility, the basics are you have to be above the age of 21 or older. Obviously, you have to be a military veteran, a U.S. military veteran, and a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, or you have to be eligible to work in the U.S. Those are kind of the basics. As far as the experience that you would need going in, we don't require formal experience, no formal writing experience or education. However, we do ask that people have some understanding of the world of screenwriting which can absolutely be self-taught. It could be through an educational institution, but that's not required. At this stage in the program, it becomes more competitive each year. So we are looking for folks who are kind of taking the path of, writing for the screen seriously in some capacity. And if you even have just taken some classes online, or you've been reading books to sort of build out your foundational knowledge, or you've just been trying your hand at scripts and reading scripts you find online, all this is a great indicator to us that you've been making an effort to pursue this. So that's what we mean when we say some experience or education. Uh, Obviously, you have to be able to demonstrate an interest in the craft and business of screenwriting and storytelling. And of course, as we mentioned, you have to be committed to completing a full-length feature or TV pilot over the course of the year. Again, starting out from a story idea. So this has to be a new concept that you are working on in the program. A huge part of the program is getting notes. As everyone's been talking about, you're going to get a lot of feedback that you might not always enjoy. So it's absolutely critical that you remain open to that feedback, constructive criticism, and of course you create a respectful and maintain a respectful environment with those around you. And yeah, as long as you can commit to attending that in-person retreat at the beginning in LA, all the other ones can be attended virtually. It's really just that initial commitment that we ask in person. So those are basic eligibility, a few exceptions that aren't mentioned here. We also allow non-veterans to apply if they're submitting as one half of a writing pair. So if you're on a writing team and one person's a veteran, the other isn't, you would be able to apply. However, both have to individually meet the requirements, obviously aside from one of them not being a veteran, and admitted independently. And if both are approved by the committee, then you can enter as a writing team. And you can, in that case, share a writing sample. So you can have the same sample. Other exception, we also allow some active duty service members to apply as long as they can commit to participating in the program, the full program. Other things that might make people not eligible is if you are completely new to writing for the screen, as in like you have never even Googled what a script looks like. Again, it's like you don't need a formal education. It's more just like you have to have a basic grasp around the idea of what screenwriting is. This will not be the program for someone who already has scripts written, is just looking to network and meet new, people, agents, managers. Again, it's about the craft, the process of writing. Also not for someone who is not interested in taking notes and feedback from mentors. If you feel confident that your script is as good as it'll ever be and you don't want to make any changes to it, this probably isn't the right program for you. And then we also recommend, this is kind of an aside, it's not really eligibility, but this is a recommendation on our part, that we typically advise against writing a very, very personal story or an autobiographical story as your script in the program, only because it can be tough to sort of get that feedback and make changes that are not aligned with what actually happened in reality. We found that it's a little bit, it comes up as an issue more often than not. And so just for this initial program, we recommend pursuing maybe a different idea, but ultimately it would be up to you and your mentors. So that quick peek into the application requirements, and I want to remind everyone, we will go into each of these in detail in just a second, but just to get started, writing sample, we asked for a complete writing sample. So this would be ideally a complete feature script, TV pilot, spec script. Those are strongly preferred. I can dive into like why we make that decision in just a moment. But other things we asked for: sample logline story ideas. So these would be 3 ideas that you have for the program formatted as loglines. The reason we ask for this is because ideally one of these might serve as the idea that you're going to be writing in the program. So say you submit 3 log lines, you might pull from one of those as the concept that you're going to be working on with your mentors. but you would be able to change that before the actual program kickoff. We also asked for a personal statement. Previously, it's been a 500 word limit. It's now 400 words. So bear that in mind. The personal statement is easily one of the most important factors in this entire application. We consider this to be a writing sample, so please take it seriously when you're writing yours. I think our panelists will have really good advice on what makes a personal statement, so I'm going to hold off on that. We'll just jump into it in a second. And then last couple things, we just asked for some paperwork and then your resume. This does not have to be a writing resume. This is your professional resume if that's all you have. If you have multiple versions of your resume you want to share, I recommend combining them in one PDF. So it's like the kind of core requirements and what we're asking for each. We may also ask you to complete a skills assessment later on the process, and we may or may not interview you. It's not guaranteed for all. So for the next portion of this, I think we're going to dive into each of the things I just mentioned. Let's see. I think I'm going to start with the writing sample. So this has changed in recent years. We previously have permitted folks to apply using basically any kind of prose. But for the writing sample, we've changed it to a script only because it's been so competitive in the last few years. I don't know if Travis, you want to offer any insight into someone who might be like nervous about this requirement or uncertain about how to proceed.
Yeah, I can jump on this one. I think the biggest reason that this change has happened is because a lot of people coming into the program that we've accepted for prose writings, it's the first time that they've ever written a screenplay. And I think the truth of it is, if you're applying for a screenwriting program of this nature, it's important that you've at least tried it at least once. And if you can't provide a screenwriting submission for this program, it would be best to just give a shot to at least a short film if you don't have anything like that done. A 5-minute short film that's really strong and really good and looks like a screenplay is going to do a lot better for you than a manuscript ever would. So that's what I think I would recommend. There's been a lot of questions about this. Just certainly stick with what you feel is your strongest piece of writing, because that's what will ultimately give us the best sense of who you are as a writer. And if you've tried screenwriting, then we thank you for that. Nicole looks like she wants to say a thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna be like a little bit harder on this thing and
Yeah.
say that. So your mentors, right? Like they are not experts at anything but either like TV writing, movie writing, or two of the thing. Some of them might have written books, some of them might have written plays, but we're to do TV and movies. And so like if you're going to if like this is a think of this as like this is you are preparing for a career in this field, right? And so you owe yourself to get the most out of this experience by having some sense of like how long it might take you to write a TV screenplay, a TV, pilot, or a movie, especially if you're going to do a movie, because those are like minimum 90 to 100 pages. And so you are not helping yourself in this program if you come in not even knowing the basics of what interior, bedroom bay is. Like, you don't need to be perfect at it, but you should have some basics down, because at the end of the day, your mentors are here. We're here to write TV, man. We're here to write film. And so if you're exploring this or you're not sure, right? Like I would say that the program is competitive now where people who are sure are coming in and they've written several of these things, and it's just harder. It's just going to be harder for you. Possible. It's just harder for you to learn. And I think you also know, like, and I will tell you, even I'm going to go one step further and say, you gotta like come into this program. You should be either I'm hardcore TV or I'm hardcore movies. Eventually that will change. You get out of the program, you could write. I write both. All right. But when I came to this program, I was like, I only want to do one thing, man. I want to write procedural TV. That's it. And then I put myself in this box, and no one knows how to teach me what I want to do. And oh, by the way, that's your first lesson in how Hollywood works. you're going to have to put yourself into a box for the first like several years of your career because they don't like it when you're I can do it all. No, you can't. You can do one thing. So get ready to, this is your first lesson of putting yourself in a good little box so that we know where to put you. And a great way to do that is to decide, oh, I'm going to write a TV. I mean, if you don't have that and you want to apply, that's great. But if when I waited until I had a procedural TV show to submit, it wasn't amazing, but it was in the right format and it hit around 58 pages, which is still a little too long. And they were like, oh, okay, this girl wants to write procedural television. Let's put her in this group. So that's my one piece of real advice for you.
Great. Unless anyone has anything else to add, I'm going to screen share our FAQ page just so as a reference as we're going through these different components. So here you'll find the application guidelines page. This is linked off of our main program page, and it answers everything you need to know about the actual process. So down here, we're going to be diving into the FAQs, but if you have basic questions about like what is the absolute, what will I need to submit and what does that mean? I recommend scrolling through this portion of the website. I'll drop the link in the chat again, but it kind of has everything that you need to know for like each piece that we're talking about now. Now we're going to get more into like the actual advice of what that looks like, but I wanted to reference this since a couple folks were asking about where they could find it after the fact. But I'll minimize this for now, but again, let me drop that in the chat just in case you want to follow along. All right. So yeah, like I mentioned, so kind of putting a bow on the writing sample portion, it is ideally you're submitting a script, ideally a feature script, TV pilot, original, or spec. We also would take a short film script. And if your script's not complete, and you can't submit a complete script, we can take the first at minimum 10 to 15 pages. But again, complete scripts are often better. If you don't have either of those things, say you have never written a script and you won't be able to write an excerpt or anything like that in the time before the application opens, we would accept alternative formats, but I think Nicole put it well as to like where, we can put our time and attention. So other formats that, may be accepted would be a stage play, web series, documentary, graphic novel, like a short story or an excerpt from book or manuscript. But I do want to put, a big asterisk on that, which is you may not be as competitive in these final stages of the application. Like we want to be honest with you that we are looking for people who have put some effort into learning the craft already. And again, that can be totally self-taught on your own. So while we do accept them, you might not be as competitive in this program. So we don't want you to, have, encounter this issue later or feel bad about it. It's just kind of the reality of where we are now and the competition that comes with this industry. Exclusions on what we accept. We're no longer taking samples in the format of poetry, academic papers, or news articles, only because it doesn't give us a strong enough grasp of your understanding for like the narrative storytelling that goes into writing a screenplay. So one other, I think we'll dive into the format. I mean, we already did talk about that to some degree, but we're also going to ask you to identify your preferred format and genre, which is the reason we do this because that plays a big role in matching you with your mentor. So be thoughtful about what you're choosing. It kind of brings me into my next topic I want to talk about, which was the log lines or story ideas. When you're choosing your format and genre preferences, if you are, you indicate my greatest interest is writing half-hour comedies, that's what I want to write, but all your logline and story ideas are for horror features, that will be a little bit tough for our application committee to decide whether or not you'll be right fit for this program. So as far as the log lines go, these again, are ideally story ideas that you might be interested in working on or being the basis of your project in the program. You'll have the chance to, update these later on, but at least Travis, Nicole, Harshit, any advice on your log lines? Like, what thought did you put into yours when you were submitting your application? Is there anything you'd like to recommend?
Nicole, you did it most recently.
So I chose, like I said, like I think I just answered a question today. It's like I am all for putting yourself in a box. So all of the ideas I submitted were 1 hour television pilot ideas. And 2 out of the 3 were procedurals. Um, Now, weirdly enough, I ended up that what I thought was going to be a 1 hour, we'll go in that later. What I thought was going to be a 1 hour drama turned into a 30-minute dramedy. And I will tell you, I love that screenplay, and it is absolutely not sellable. And my reps are like, thanks, but we're not even going to use this as a sample for you because it doesn't fit with what we're trying to sell you as. So, but at the beginning, I put in 3 1 hour drama, and 2 of them were procedural dramas, because that's what I like to write, and that's what I want. And maybe you think you're a comedy writer, right? And if all of your log lines are 1 hour horror shows or 1 hour or features, then maybe you're a feature writer, and that's okay. That's one of the great reasons of writing log lines. You discover what actually what genre or what thing you actually want to write.
Yeah, I mean it's in the town too. I have written 7 different vampire projects at this point. Because I write one that gets a lot of attention, right? And I was like, oh, we love that one, but like someone else has it. Can you write this one for us? Can you do this one for us, right? And she get put into a box. The easiest example is Eric Heiser is one of the best, working screenwriters out there. He was a horror guy for years, right? Because he had found success in it, right? And he was a very good horror movie writer, but he wanted to do more, right? So the way he was able to burst out of it was, this is a guy in the WGA making a living doing it full time. He optioned the short story behind Arrival on his own, wrote it fully on spec on his own, and then sold that, right? And that's what moved him away from just horror to doing more sci-fi drama stuff, right? And so that's not to say that's, a good or bad thing. That's just the nature of the industry, right? Once someone knows you have talent in something, they want more of that, right? And then the flip side is, as a newer writer, right? You've got to develop your craft. I mean, like, be banging the table saying you got to develop your craft, right? And the best way to develop your craft is you keep doing something in the same genre, the same format, right? If you're jumping from TV to feature to, drama to comedy to horror to action, right? You are not going to learn the tropes of the genre, the things that are needed, and you're not going to develop your craft enough in that one field to make your writing compelling enough to burst through the hundreds of thousands of wannabe screenwriters out there, right? So we're not saying it to limit your imagination. It's more, think about it that you've got to develop your craft and you've got to break through into a very competitive industry. And one of the best ways to do it is to get focused with mentors who understand the craft and can, in that genre, can uplevel your own craft, and then folks who can be good resources in a network to help you maybe get that first role in maybe a procedural TV drama like Nicole, right? Or somebody, if you're really into sitcoms, right, you will be paired up with sitcom mentors, right, who will be good resources for you in that sense. To go back to, Kira's original question of, ways to make yourself stand out. I'd say Kira mentioned this previously, and I'll just, double down on it. Make sure you don't ignore your personal statement. That is a writing sample. I saw some questions before about like, oh, I've got like lots of life experiences, etc. Right? 500 words or 400 words seems like it's too short. One of the things that's really important for you as a writer in this field of screen or TV writing is being able to write concisely and vividly. And that means you have to select the most impactful moments of your own background or the action in the screenplay that you're doing, right? And so this is kind of a test of that. Can you distill something in your background into a really cool and engaging personal story in 400 words and less? because the easiest thing to sell should be yourself, right? Because you know yourself the best. And if you can't sell yourself, how are you going to be able to sell an imaginary idea that you've come up with, right? So treat it as this is part of the exercise, this is part of the application process, and make sure you have a really good personal statement.
Yeah, I'll add in here. I'm going to make this very dumb. If you've all seen SpongeBob, do you remember the episode with the plain SpongeBob thing? This is a thing that
Yo,
scares me.
Travis,
Terribly.
Travis, we got people who like serving in Vietnam here. No, they have not seen
No,
SpongeBob. No, kidding,
that's
kidding.
fine. I thought it was universal. No, think about plain SpongeBob when you're working on this stuff, because there is a very real trap that happens when you start approaching an application for something like this, where commerciality becomes like your big concern. And if you're focused on what is going to sell, how do you sell yourself, what are people going to like want, what does the marketplace need, what are these kind of things, that it can be helpful to an extent, but you have to maintain what makes you you, and you have to be honest about the kind of stuff that you want to create. I write things that are very weird, and like just the weird side of fantasy and comedy and kind of stuff is where I feel comfortable. And I don't think that I really held back on that in my application. And I think that definitely helps you stand out. So I don't think that this application is the time to really be like, oh, I'm going to think about what's the most commercial things for me to submit, because you can run in the danger of plain SpongeBobbing yourself and watering yourself down. And we want to see you as the whole picture, because you as a whole picture have interesting stories to tell. And if you're holding back, you're not doing yourself any favors. That was probably way more confusing than it needed to be, but cool.
I'll jump back in there, and I will just say, every time you like, from now on, especially if you are going to pursue this career, every time you submit a writing sample, that is a writing sample. What we are trying to assess, and what the mentors that are going to get are trying to assess, is, can this person tell a story quick in a hurry, right? Like, I mean, think about like our attention spans now, right? I won't even watch through an entire TikTok. You think I'm going to read somebody's, like, personal statements that, like, well, I was born on a, I don't know, like a hill, and then I went here, and then it's like, I'm out, right? Like, your job is to capture their attention. So it doesn't need to be your entire life story, right? But I told like this specific story about how I ended up joining the Navy after my mom told me she wasn't going to pay for journalism school. And she's just like, I'm not paying for that. And it was like in 400 words, but it's like I weaved it from how I started there to how I got to writing scripts and why I wanted to be a part of this. And so every sample you submit is, can you tell a good story? That's really what they're looking for. It should be fun, it should be interesting, or dark and interesting, but it should keep my attention. And that's what you're trying to do in those 400 words. And oh, by the way, if you've already applied for like some of the fellowships that the studios do, then that's all the advice that you'll get. But the bottom line is, everything you submit is, we're trying to see if you can tell a story. And then the I'm gonna beat this on the head one more time. The reason we want to see you submitting, I saw someone who said, like, well, why not prose? And it's like, you can, right? If you can tell a great story, but it's just like, this program, and I really want to impress upon it, we're here to do one thing, man. We're here to write for Hollywood. That is TV scripts, and that is film scripts. That's what we do. And it doesn't mean that other writing isn't valid. It certainly is. But these guys who you're going to get mentored with, they don't care about that. They don't care about one thing: TV or film. And they are trying to break you, trying to get you ready to learn how to write so that you can break into this industry. Because if you think they don't care, you've never met an executive. They really don't care. Like, oh my gosh, they won't even, like, you'll be talking to their face, and they'll be like zoning out. So it's to get you toughened up to be like, this is a business, and we're here for one thing: writing TV scripts, writing film scripts. Everything
Yeah.
else is important, but not in this program.
Nicole, you have the perfect opportunity to be like, I'm here to do two things: chew bubble gum and tell interesting stories. And I'm
That's
all out of
it.
bubble gum. I mean,
Someone's gonna be like, that girl was harsh. So I'd be like, but it's just, I want to be clear about that, because like I want, like, you're gonna, if you get in, and we've seen this in the past, right? Like, if you get in and you're like, oh, I thought this was going to be like a wonderful little writing retreat. And they're like, no, I've got like 6 scripts to write from staff writers I've got to work on, and I got to read your stuff, right? And then you're just like, well, I just kind of explore it. No, man, like, wait, this is your one chance. This is your one chance as a veteran, right? It's the unfair advantage. Like in Hollywood, everybody has an unfair advantage. Like most people who have unfair advantages, they were born to like Hollywood producers, or they were born to actors or whatever, right? That's their unfair advantage. Okay. Nepotism is a thing here, and that's just the sky is blue. Nepotism exists, right? Okay. But all of you are veterans, and you have one unfair advantage over everybody else. You're a veteran and you get access. Have a cheat code in this program. You get access to working Hollywood screenwriters, the people who you don't know how to get to. So this is your opportunity. And I would just implore upon you. Like, I went from knowing nobody to getting a job in like 3 years, okay, which is lightning speed. So this program can work for you, but you need to know, am I here to write TV and film? Because if I'm not, then wait until I'm ready, because you don't want to waste this opportunity being kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You won't get to do this program again. So it's just very important to me, at least, like, if you're here to write and write for TV or film, this is the place for you, but let's go.
Yeah, here's another unfair advantage. You're a fucking veteran. You should have a cool ass personal story, man. Like, if you don't, I guess if you're in a Coast Guard, fine. But like, really, all of you, all of you should have a very cool personal statement. And the thing you find that most of the people who work here in Hollywood, they come from a very similar background, right? They grew up relatively well off. Parents are doctors or Steven Spielberg, right? They go to like NYU or AFI or Williams College, right? And they have a very specific, kind of boring background, right? Boring in the sense that it's always the same. And so you coming in from a very different background can be very interesting and exciting, right? And so it requires a bit of self-reflection, right? Go into your background, into your past to identify the things that are cool, right? And then once you get into this program, just like Nicole said, right? Draw on that, right? I mean, if you write action and you've been in a war zone, you're gonna know the weight of an M16, right? You know the smell of sulfur when you shoot it out, right? And that is something that 95% of the writers in this town will not understand. And so you've got some pretty awesome advantages here, not just in terms of access, but in terms of life skills. And I hope you take advantage of that.
Just for the record, I went over some really big waves on a boat once.
Travis once spilled his Mai Tai when he had a really big wave, and it was just soul crushing.
It was so hard, so hard, but I overcame.
We're all proud. Great. Those were all such great answers and great advice. I feel like you covered a lot of the questions that I was going to get to anyway, and I hope that people were listening, because definitely keep all this in mind as you go into your application. Um, on top of like covering more of the do's and don'ts for applying and what makes people stand out, all of that, I wanted to get to some of the Q&A, which sort of touches on a lot of these topics. So, last call, if you want to submit a question, please submit it in the Q&A box, which is on the toolbar at the bottom of the screen. A lot of them have been answered. Travis and Harsha have been powering through these, so yours might have been answered, a written version of it. If you open up the Q&A, I believe it's all visible there. So check that out if you don't hear us cover what you're doing. I do want to go over one question about the skills assessment, but I think it's best if Travis maybe gives a quick overview of what that looks like. Travis, if you're down.
Yeah, for sure. So the skill assessment is a thing that we've implemented over the last couple of years to just get a better gauge of where you are at as writers, to better pair you up with mentors, because we have mentors from all sorts of different levels of Hollywood who are very willing to work with very different levels of writers. So it's just a tool that we use to match you better with the training that is going to best help you with your current state in your journey. So the skill assessment is pretty basic. It asks you to identify the parts of a screenplay. It will give you a writing prompt, so you'll have an opportunity to show us like how you respond to just a couple of different writing things in a screenplay format, and a few other things. It'll ask you about your process and all of these other sorts of fundamental things. that are related to screenwriting, so we can figure out where you are on the slider from beginner to advanced. It's not a pass fail thing. It's not, I did a terrible job. It's simply, hey, what mentors do we have in the stable that we can match with you to best help you? That's really, I think, the basics of it. And if you like Breaking Bad, I use Breaking Bad on the skills assessment, so that's there.
So, diving into some other pieces, I of course just lost my place, but someone had mentioned, since we were just on the topic of samples and like what to submit, is it better to submit a writing sample that has a military theme or one that doesn't? In case we haven't mentioned this directly, you do not have to write a story that has anything to do with the military. Like I'm sure that like I don't know, like Travis, Harsh, and Nicole, what you all submitted
Yeah,
for your stories,
look,
but
yeah, I wrote a sports comedy when I was in the program. Bobby, who was the other guy from my year, gone to WGA, he's a TV writer now. He wrote a TV thriller, right? And that had nothing to do with the military experiences or whatnot, right? So write what you are passionate about, write what you want to write. Write something that you think you can write awesomely, as opposed to something that you think the market might want or that matches your background.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
Most
Go
people
ahead.
don't write, sorry, most people don't write anything related to their military career. You gotta remember there's a ton of like experience, like for someone who served like 2 years from all the way to someone who served like
Yeah.
20 or 30 years. But like actually most military veterans don't write about the military. I'm the one, I think I am one of the few people who almost writes exclusively about the military, although I'm starting to branch out, but that's just like my interest. But yeah, everyone else in my group wrote like had nothing to do with the military, like from like a historical drama to like actually three historical dramas in my group, and then like two military, and so I mean it just varies, so don't let that stop you. And you don't have to tell, I think I saw a question in there, you don't have to tell a story when you do your personal statement about your military service. Harsha, I think it's just saying that it's because like when you go into, if you when many of you will make it, I'm going to like claim that for you. Okay, when you go to your first meeting with an exec and they ask you, so tell me about yourself, right? Like there are very few people actually in this business that have background that you have. So it is a quick and easy way for people to remember you. And also people love hearing military stories. I don't know why. But that to you, it's like, oh, whatever, ho hum. But to them, they're like, oh my gosh, right? So that's just what we mean by that's an unfair advantage for you, is that you have all these cool stories, especially if you deployed somewhere, anywhere, they want to hear about it. You don't have to use that as your personal statement. Anything that's emotionally impactful and that tells a good story, feel free to use that.
Yeah, I think unless this is maybe sort of counterintuitive, but unless it's like the best military script that's ever existed, you might not be doing yourself a favor, because we read a lot of applications and we read a lot of military related scripts that come through the application process. And you know, if you want to write in that vein, great, but it will definitely have some stiffer competition and be harder to stand out. When I applied, I wrote a really dark comedy about an immortal who wants to die and is actively trying to, and that was what my application piece was. And I know whoever read that was like, ew. But I would just say, if you have something other than, if you only have military, great, submit that. If you're really proud of it, that's fantastic. But just know, we read a lot of applications and you want to stand out. So if it's the best, go for it. I salute you.
yeah, all well said. And I just covering a couple other small things about the writing sample. Like we mentioned, we do prefer complete scripts, but you can submit a 10 to 15 page excerpt of a script, and then as the backup, we have the other formats that you can submit, since it keeps coming up. But yes, if you have a complete script, submit the complete one rather than just the portion of it. But again, we will accept that if need be, and there's more clarity on that in the FAQs on our website. But just wanted to mention that for folks who are still asking. someone had also brought up a question about the essay questions. For reference, yes, we still have essay questions, but they're sort of integrated into different portions of the application now. They're usually 150 to 200 words or so, and they're going to be a little different from last year, but I say things to look out for is we're trying to understand how you collaborate in a group, like what is your sort of working relationship with others, just understanding your process, and it helps us figure out if we have the right mentor for you in the program. And we're just trying to get a deeper understanding of what your familiarity is with the industry and what your intentions are sort of moving forward, what you want to bring to this program. So yes, there will be some short essay questions, but again, they are short. It's kind of giving us an idea, a little bit deeper insight into topics you might not cover in your personal statement. Okay, addressing that. And then another couple people have also asked about the interviews. Like I said, not everyone's going to interview. It's sort of just dependent on where we are in the process and who needs to participate in that stage. But again, the interviews also serve a similar purpose of giving us a deeper understanding into you. Maybe there was some aspect that we weren't able to sort of see on your application. We want to just really understand, your voice, who you are. And yeah, I don't know, Travis, if you want to shed some light on the interview. We're not obviously going to give you like a script for how to interview. It's sort of just a personality thing. But if you had any advice for that, Travis.
Yeah, the interview is pretty simple. It's just we want to make sure that, like, if we're gonna unleash you into a room with the mentors, you're gonna be able to handle that fine. And sometimes there's things in the application that are hard to understand, and we ask really specific questions to kind of help understand what are your goals, what are you trying to get out of the program. It very much varies, but the biggest thing with the interviews is just making sure, like, hey, are you who you say you are, and are you going to be okay with the opportunity that we're providing to you? So yeah.
Yep. And then another quick question since it came up, mentioning again that we receive anywhere from, I'd say 300 to 500, depending on the year, it goes up and down, applications, and then we're choosing around 35 to 45 or so, but it might vary slightly. So it come up a couple times, just wanted to mention that again. Let's see. I really wanted to touch on sort of more advice that you all have for crafting a strong application. So let's see.
Oh, Kira, I see a
Yeah.
question from, I think that Danny Kim. I clicked
Mhm.
on it like to answer it live. I meant to actually type it, but must have hit the wrong thing. But I just want to answer this real quick for you. Hey, Danny, nice to meet you. Um, so I see your question. I want to write personally resonating scripts, not autobiographical, but still from my experiences. Um, hey, so when we say don't write personal stories, what we mean is we don't want you to go in there. It's hard to give feedback on like, well, this actually happened to me because whenever something like, for example, whenever I hear something's like based on a true story, I'm like, mostly like it did not, like a lot of times, screenwriters have to take liberties because a person's actual real story is boring as hell, right? And you have to make a story like flow like story, right? And so it's tough sometimes to give people feedback on like a specific event from your childhood that happened your way, um, because then it's tough to separate you from the story you from story you. So that's why they usually try to shy away from that. The other thing I would say is that and I'll give you, I would say is that uh oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. I was going to say something about like you are in a part of every story. Like I am every character I write, like in a way, right? I'm a fictionalized version of that. But it's not a wound, it's a scar that I'm writing from. So it's not so incredibly, like painful that like every time the mentors ask me something or give me criticism, I don't break down and cry. Because that's also very awkward. Everyone gets quiet in the group. Nobody wants to talk about it afterwards. And then you get robbed because you're not going to get like the mentors are, these are nice people. They're not going to give you ever bad feedback, but then your screenplay will suck because you didn't get the feedback you needed because people were trying to be careful about your feelings. And in this business, you don't you don't want that. You want to hear that feedback, and no one's going to ever try to break you. No, if you get feedback where people try to break you, that person's not trying to help you. They're just trying to be a dick, right? No one has ever given me feedback that's caused me to cry, but they will give me feedback that, for me personally, inside, I'm like, that's, I don't know what they're talking about. But on the outside, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you. That's a very interesting note. So that's what they want. They're trying, like, nobody wants to make you cry, and nobody wants to fight you on, your personal childhood abuse story. But they do need to give you feedback. And it's easier to do that when they know that you're not going to either turn into a rage monster or break down. That's what we need.
I
I hope
like
that
to,
helps.
Yeah, thank
Can
you
I-
for that clarification.
can I piggyback just a little bit? So this is a very much nuts and bolts kind of program. This is not, you're not going to be in this program, most likely, writing the script that is going to win you an Oscar. Like, that is the last thing you should be trying to do. You're not going to be writing the script that is going to launch you into the stratosphere in Hollywood. This is where you come to learn how to write really good scripts. And it's much easier to learn how to write really good scripts if you just take what the mentors are telling you and start from the beginning, start from scratch, from concept to completion with them to learn how do they do it. You should never be focused on the end goal of what's going to happen at the end of this program, because what should happen at the end of this program is that you have the tools to go out and fish. That's really kind of how I would view it. That's why no personal statements and stuff, because yeah, I mean, sorry, not no personal statements, no personal stories. If you're writing something autobiographical that you think is going to win you awards and launch you into your career, okay, wonderful. Go write that. But don't do that with this program, because that's not what this is about. It's about learning how to do that. So use what you learn from this program to then go write that. Write something that's not so, there's no words for that feeling, I guess. Go ahead.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, thank you both for that. I wanted to touch on the sort of criteria as far as what we look for when we're actually reviewing the applications themselves. So a lot of this we've spoken about from the perspective of the applicant, but there also is the side of reviewing, like what makes a strong application. And I think a lot of that same advice can be carried over when it comes to the review process. So you just turn it's like what we look for in a strong personal statement is everything we've mentioned, everything we've advised you to include in yours. So I guess, is there any other advice that I have some thoughts as to what I would share, but is there any advice you all have as far as like what would make a strong application from our side, you as the reviewer? Travis, maybe you could start.
Sure. I do a lot of reviewing. For me, I think the biggest thing is I want to see that you have a voice. I want to see that you know how to use words to paint yourself as a person on the page. When you read a good application, or when I read a good application, you can really tell, like, when someone is just comfortable and just they kind of know what they're doing with words, and that's exciting to see. Like I said before, the greatest personal statement that I've ever read, someone had written as a eulogy for themselves, and that really stood out. That was interesting. That was someone who kind of had a sense of like how to use words in a fun, interesting way. And when it comes to like the personal statement stuff, it's great if you've gone through a lot of things in your life, but I don't necessarily just want to see that you're someone who's like had a lot of tragedy happen to you. I want to see that you're someone who's like maybe seen and experienced some things, but you've overcome that and become someone else aside from that. It's great to know where you come from or came from, but we really need to know who you are right now as a person, because that's going to really determine if you're ready for the opportunity that this is. Yeah.
Nicole and Harsha, anything to add?
I'll just say, I don't review the application packets, but I will say that if you do get into the interview portion, just really focus on being, a fun person, someone that, we'd want to have a conversation with, like in an Uber on the way to the airport, right? One of the mentees my year ended up dropping from the program, and it was a good thing because the whole weekend she was there, she spent fighting with like me and another mentor on like very basic feedback we were giving her, right? To where, we were just like, this is not somebody that, is getting much out of the program, right? So at any interaction you have with Travis or Kira or anybody else you're interviewing with, just be somebody who's open to feedback and open to doing a great job in this program. Even if you're in the Air Force, you can make yourself a good person. All right, I've offended I think every service other than the Army and Marines.
Army guys are like that, y'all. So, I would just say that, and I'm gonna give a weird roundabout way. Okay, like as I've already admitted, I'm a TikTok scroller, although RIP, I don't have it on my phone anymore. But when I did, there were if you scroll fast enough, right, it'll ruin your attention span. But man, oh man, if you're a good storyteller, I'm gonna stop on you. And that's what you're trying to get us to do, right? Like this is a paper version of TikTok. So you got to catch me within that first like line or two. All right. And so be bold, right? Tell your story and tell it well. And you're like, well, hello, Nicole. And I'm like, man, if I could tell you that, I could sell so many screenwriting courses, and I don't got it. But I do know that when you listen to a story, what holds your attention, what doesn't. So do that. That's really what we're trying to do. The first thing is, can you catch us with a story? Because before we ever meet you, we meet your writing, right? At the point you get interviewed, we're just trying to make sure, are you a cool hang? Like, are you going to be annoying? Or are you going to be cool? All right. Because 85% of this business is like, and I talk like I've been in the business forever. I have not, but I have learned a lot by hanging out with other writers. And 85% is this guy gonna murder us all if we give him bad notes, or is he gonna be that person? And you don't want to be that person. You just want to be cool, man. Be cool. So, but the first thing before we can find out if you're really cool, we're gonna find that out through, can this person tell a story? So catch us with your stories. And every essay, I cannot emphasize enough, every essay, every writing sample is an opportunity to show that you can tell a story. So tell us a good story.
Exactly. Yeah, fully agree. And then I guess my only other notes to add about what the actual review process looks like. Well, for perspective, we have a pretty intense 5-stage process. So no matter what happens, you are going to get many eyes on your application in those initial rounds. So it's not just going to be one person who, say they can't relate to your preferred genre format, they knock it out. That doesn't happen. There's going to be multiple people reading, whether it's alumni from the program, mentors, working writers, our staff, all of the above will be looking at your application. So, find a way to connect, put yourself out there. I'm sure, I feel like different readers connect with different people in different ways. And it's that's why we get such a diverse and interesting, very experienced cohort every year. Anything else to add on the sort of like review side of it? Good. I wanted to get into, I know we have, more questions that we might not get to, but there's a few final things that I want to touch on. Quick mention, like I said, the program is a hybrid, virtual, in person, mostly virtual. So if you're not in LA, it's not going to hold you back necessarily. There are a few little caveats to that I should mention, and maybe everyone else can speak to that. If you're looking to, say, like be a TV writer and you want to work in a writer's room, in all reality, it will be a little difficult for you to pursue that path if you're not in Los Angeles. At this moment, like, you don't have to be fully moved over, if you're in the earlier stages, but it's something to bear in mind. We do take people from out of state. There's going to be a slight priority for folks who are local to Los Angeles, just because we want to start incorporating more in-person events again. But it's not going to be a factor that gets you removed. Just keep in mind about how, jobs work, like what your intention is with your career moving forward. And then kind of jumping off of that, I did want to sort of touch on like where the industry is at right now. If you're, you know, looped in with entertainment as a whole, it's not been the easiest year, I think, for everybody. So, you know, we're going to be giving you all the tools that you'll need, and we're giving you the education, and you'll be working with mentors and developing your script and all this, and that's like evergreen knowledge. But I do want to also set expectations that, you know, you're not necessarily going to get immediately hired out of this program. It might not be the easiest path. To be frank, it's a very tough path to walk, and I think that everyone here can attest to that. So just keep that in mind as you're moving forward. I don't want to discourage you, but it is a reality. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on the state of things right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. So, even in the good times, right? This is one of the hardest careers to get into, right? I have worked at McKinsey. I've been a product manager at Google. I have an MBA from Wharton, a law degree from Georgetown, right? And this is the hardest career I have ever been in. Okay, it is extraordinarily competitive. More people make it to the ranks of professional baseball every year than new writers make it to the WGA. So that's just to give you a sense of the stats that are out there that make it exceptionally difficult to make this as a career. But that's not to discourage you, right? It's just to underline that you need to be like homicidally focused on making this happen, right? It is going to be extraordinarily difficult to treat this as like a side gig or something you're not super passionate about. And then to make it as a working writer, because you're going to be competing against people who are putting in that time and effort to up level their craft. And this is a great program where you're going to be connected with some really good mentors. You're going to have a chance to up level your craft. You're going to have a chance to make connections, right? But if you're doing this and you're kind of like about the industry, right? I just recommend you not to go into the program, right? Because you probably won't get in. And even if you do, you're gonna quickly realize that the pace of it is something that's not really gonna be something that's gonna make you happy, right? And that's okay. Not everyone can be a writer, right? But I hope everyone who is passionate about this does jump into the program just because, you know, um, it's a hard time in the town right now. We've had strikes, we've had COVID, we've had this like generational fire that's like run through, right? A lot of writers have not been staffed or have not sold anything in like a year or two, right? Just because no one's been buying anything, right? But at some point, I think it's going to recover. And when it does, I really hope that we get folks who have really interesting stories to tell. Again, like I said, most of the people who come into this town grew up pretty well off, right? That went on ski trips and went like, hang gliding and all this shit I could never do as a kid, right? But the vast majority of people in America did not grow up that way. And that's the vast majority of people who watch TV. And so I think your stories are valuable. I think they matter. And I hope that, you use this program to get yourself in a position to where you can, sell those stories and get them on screen so that people who, come from the background that we do have a chance to see our stories told authentically on screen.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll add to that. Like, look, guys, I'm not super young. And I know people a lot older than me who have started out. But I'm gonna be real, like, super honest. Like, just like Harsha said, just like Travis said, you gotta be laser focused on this is what I want to do. This is not for the faint at heart. Look, I retired and I have friends who retired and they are making like 180K, like straight out of the military, living that sweet, sweet contractor life. Okay, like buying houses, and I'm living in an apartment in Van Nuys. All right. And if you're from LA and you know Van Nuys, and you know that is not a brag. All right. But this is what I want to do, right? I mean, I could have easily gotten out and gone and work for like Lockheed Martin, and I too could have been making, like close to 200K and had a nice life, and that's great money, and there's no point in that. And I say that not so that you get discouraged, so that like, all right, we came here to play. All right. And this is your first step. And I do want to encourage you because look, like I said, I didn't know anybody when I started this program, hardly anyone, right? I had like zero experience, and now I got a job. Okay. I just started this job yesterday, but I got a job. And you know who hired me? One of my mentors. So when I tell you that you are auditioning for your future, it starts. It's like there's another guy, what's his name? I have his book over here. You know what I'm talking about, Nihil, right? I'm gonna show his book real quick. Kira, I want you to give me like points, all right? Okay, like you see this book, guys? All right. This book like literally helped me to like figure out how to plan my TV career. It's incredible. I know this guy, he talks, he's a part of this program, so you'll meet him if you get into this program. But that book's a great because it's really half of it is the writing, right? And it has to be amazing writing, but half of it is like how you show up. So when I tell you, you really need to show up correct to this program, you could be talking, one of your mentors could be your future boss. I didn't know that. I didn't even think he like remembered me. And he just called me up out of the blue and was like, hey, I have an opportunity for you. That's how it works in this town. It's so weird because in the military, you got to call a detailer, you got to negotiate, you got to pretend like you're so interested in this one job, and you know you don't want to go to that job. That's not what it's like here. Here it is. You're sitting on your butt one day. I literally was going to go do something else. I was sitting on my butt, and just right after Christmas, he called me with this opportunity and I got a job. And it was like, can you start tomorrow? And I was like, oh my God. Okay, yes. But it is all about coming like ready to play from day one. And this fellowship, you getting into this not fellowship, but you getting into this project, you getting into this program is step one. It can happen for you. I'm not saying it will happen for you like it happened for me. There's no one path. And that's super annoying and frustrating because I love, as we can all tell, I love order and discipline and knowing what the next step is. And that's just not what this career is like. Okay. So you got to get right with yourself and understand like, it's not your age, it's your risk for tolerance. And it just so happens the older you get, the less your risk, your tolerance for risk is. And you have to decide, am I able to go back and how high is my tolerance for risk? And this is a high risk, high reward, but high risk career. And you just have to be okay with that and understand. It's like doctors being okay with debt. Like you just have to, like, that's just the deal. And so I say this not to be harsh. I'm just like, we're here to play or we're here to go get a government contractor job, which is nothing wrong with that. I think about that every day. I could be making that sweet, sweet cash and I'm not, I'm making not sweet cash, but I'm doing what I want. So
Yeah, it takes I'd say about 5 to 10 years to develop your craft enough in order to get that writing job. And of all the people I've known in this industry, it has consistently been 5 to 10 years working at it, right? These are folks who got an MFA from a top program, right? These are folks who have some experience acting or whatever, right? To develop your craft as a writer is going to take 5 to 10 years. And if you're like, I'm gonna be dead in 5 to 10 years, maybe not the right, field to go into, right? You can always become a novel writer. You can put something on, Kindle Direct Publishing, right? There are many different ways to get your stuff out there, right? But, screenwriting, TV writing is a very specific craft, and it takes time to develop it enough in order for your work to become meaningful enough to attract attention. And it's okay to have a job while you do that, right? It is okay. When I was in this program, I was working at YouTube full time, right? And I did this on the nights and weekends, just totally ignoring my wife and kids. And look, they're still with me, thankfully, right? Who knows for how much longer? But I got into the guild out of it, right? And so you're gonna have to make those hard choices, right? In terms of your free time, you're gonna have to sacrifice nights, weekends, right? You're gonna have to give up hobbies, right? You might not be able to hang out with your friends as much as possible, right? Um, it sounds hard, but that's just the nature of trying to make it as a writer in a very, very competitive industry.
yeah. Oh, not to jump on you, Harsha, but I just want to also say, just to give you a sense, because I always think people don't give you a sense of how long people have been doing this. I was on active duty when I started this journey. Like, I started writing in 2017. Like, my first script I wrote was in 2017. It was horrible. It'll never see the light of day of anybody, but I started taking classes online. I lived in Hawaii. And so, of course, like, I was, classes were always like I was running home from work or I was staying late or staying at late at work, but I was doing this while I was on active duty. Like I was, getting like sent off on missions and stuff, but I just like, instead of like going out with people, I was on the ship writing my screenplay. Like it sucked because everybody knows if you're on the Navy and you pull into port, the first thing you want to do is get the hell off that ship. And I couldn't because I had homework due. So, I say that to say like, it is a sacrifice to do this job. And sometimes you're like, what? I'm stupid. Why am I've made $0 right away. I've made $0 with the exception of yesterday. in this field, okay, and it's not even a lot of money, but that's just kind of like, I'm just nuts. Like I'm not built for anything else but this. And I doing this has taught me I don't want to do anything else but this.
Again, 5 to 10 years, right? If Nicole started in 2017, was it 8 year mark or 7 year mark when she, was able to get paid for her writing, right? It's true for everybody. Also, shout out to my man Robin. I saw a fellow Georgetown alum, man. I saw you, man. I just forgot for like 40 minutes to give you the shout out.
I have a couple of things to add. First thing is that it's preposterous that Nicole thought anyone could ever forget her, period. That's insane to me. But on a real note, this is definitely not a business for the faint of heart. This is a thing that comes with a lot of no's and a lot of rejections and a lot of you thinking that you got something and never hearing anything for years. And then maybe an email comes through. But it takes a special person to kind of keep pushing through all of the heartbreak and the weirdness and all of that and keep showing up to the page and keep showing up and being a great, fun, not jaded person. So you have to be in this for the long haul, no matter what, because it's gonna hurt every step of the way, but it's also going to feel absolutely amazing. And I've seen a lot of chat and stuff about like ages and things. I don't think that age plays any sort of factor in who you are as a writer. We've seen many people go through this program who are 80 years old and above and have done amazing things like as a result of it. Some of our mentors didn't get started in screenwriting until they were in their 60s and stuff. So it's never too late to get started. But the biggest thing is that you need to understand that this is gonna be hard. It's gonna have all kinds of barriers in the way. It's just being able to take those barriers to the face and keep running anyway. You can't let the barriers kill your momentum. You got to keep going. And, never stop. That's all I'll say. The business will pick back up.
Yeah, you guys should be able to climb over barriers. I mean, you had those walls we had to climb in like basic training or boot camp, right?
Yeah, right.
I think even the Air Force had to climb those walls.
No, this is, yeah, great advice. And I know we have a lot of questions to cover, but I don't want to keep our panelists long. So I'm gonna drop in the chat right now some resources for you all to review quickly. Let's see if it'll send. So it's a lot of links, but the top one you'll see in that message is our resource center. And this is on WGF's website. Really quick, gonna screen share just so you can navigate it. Oh, I cannot screen share. Let's see. All right, here it is. So on WGF's website, we have a resource center where we have links to, fellowships and writing programs that you might be interested in. Plenty of information to find there. Essential books we recommend. Web resources where you can locate scripts. And then I highly recommend checking out this tips for writing bio, personal statement, screenwriting resume. Our librarian and I worked together to put together some tips that we found after many, many application reviews and questions we get from folks. So that is just one page that you can explore. And if you're really new to formatting or you just want to learn more and kind of get an idea of what to do, we also have formatting fundamentals that were put together by our librarians. Super helpful if you want to understand how specifically scripts are formatted depending on the format genre. So yeah, check it out. It's on our website. You just go to wgfoundation.org and then click Resource Center. This stuff is super useful and highly recommend checking it out if you want some help with the basics. Any other like recommendations or from you all, like as far as like resources people should check out that maybe we're missing?
Hmm.
Nothing I see.
And
Then
I just took a lot. I mean, I read books, I took courses online. You know, I think I think that if you know how to do the basics of how to write a screenplay or a feature, that's you're doing pretty good. And then, I feel that at least even if you write a spec, I think specs are a little easier because the characters are established even better. But knowing how to do that, and that's going to get you far.
Yeah. Well, I know I've kept you all past when I said, so I guess as our last question, do you have any final words of inspiration or advice for the folks here? I will start by saying, if in the chance that you aren't able to make it into this cohort, please do not be discouraged. A large number of our applicants every year are folks who have applied multiple times. I assure you, it's something that we notice. If you have applied more than once, we have a note on in our file where it's like, when your application comes in, we see that you've applied more than once. So please keep applying. Don't be discouraged. It's not easy, but trust me, hard work does pay off over time. But yeah, I pass the floor to anyone else who has some inspiration or advice to share.
Ooh, I'll go, and then I'd love to hear from Harsha. 'Cause, he's a mentor. He's completed the whole cycle from from start all the way to mentor.
I've
I'm trying
gone
to get
from
there, man.
fetus to old man.
That's right. One day, man, I'm gonna be there. Look, this is a tough climb. I think of it sometimes as like climbing Everest. It's slow and steady. And you're gonna get 7 different ways. Every writer you'll meet will have a different way that they broke in. There is no path. There's only being ready for when you get the opportunity. You cannot control what opportunities you're going to get, and you just can't. But what you can control is that when an opportunity does come your way, your craft is ready to be able to take advantage of it and move forward. That's the only thing you control. And this program, if you get in, it's going to help you do that. And I think the number one thing that I took from this program was learning a routine, learning how I wrote, and a routine for my routine, and my routine will be different from yours. My hot take is that when someone tells me to write every day, I'm like, ugh, that is such advice for just one type of person. I cannot write every day. I write by project, and I give myself deadlines. But this program helped me to learn how to create a process, because this is my profession now. If you make widgets, you got to learn how to make widgets. Okay, our widgets are uh, screenplays. All right, you got to figure out how to produce widgets. If you don't produce widgets, you're not a screenwriter. And it's simple as that. And so this program is going to help you figure out how to consistently produce widgets.
Yeah, I can follow Nicole. I'll say, I'll just double down again. I've said this many times. You have to develop your craft, and that takes time and effort. A great story that I remember is Jay Leno, when he was like an aspiring comic out here in LA. He said every time he'd be at home writing and he'd see the other comics like in the same peer group, they'd be at the Lakers game, right? They have that close up on him, right? And he would say, excellent, because that person is not working while I'm back here working. Right? That is the mentality that you have to have. Just this insane drive and focus. It doesn't have to be every day. You have to find the way that works for you. But if you're not dedicating time to develop your craft, it's simply not going to get better. And a good way to do it, if you're having trouble, motivating yourself, I mentioned this in the chat, but yes, a homicidal amount. You got it, Danny Kim. Um, get a writers group. That for me was one of the biggest up levelers for my career, right? And I've got 2 writers groups now, right? One for my screenwriting stuff, and then one for my sketch comedy stuff, which I do with Travis on a very regular basis, right? And I meet with my writers group once every week, right? It's 3 or 4 people who are also just as equally committed as me to making it in this town, right? And every week, somebody has to submit something, right? There's 4 to 5 of us. So every month, I'm turning in something for people to review. And when they give their feedback, I sit quietly and I take it for 40 minutes each time with a smile on my fucking face, right? Even though inside, I'm like, I will kill you all in your sleep tonight, right? And that single decision to jump into a writer's group has significantly up-leveled my craft, because I'm getting folks who are looking at my work on a weekly, monthly basis, right, to tell me ways to make it better. And I'm forced to be in a rhythm where I'm submitting something on a regular basis. You come to this town, you throw a rock, right? You're going to hit 5 screenwriters before it lands, right? And all those screenwriters are people who say they're screenwriters, but the moment you write a full, feature-length screenplay or TV pilot, right, you're already in the top 50%. because people do not spend the time and the effort to develop their craft. And so whatever you can do, right? It doesn't need to be this program, but this program is a good way to, develop your craft, right? Find a way to do it. Because if you really, really want to make it as a writer, you have to work harder at this.
Yeah, I could not uh, double down on that more. I mean, I, I'm just gonna humble brag. It's not even that humble. I'm pretty proud of myself. I finished writing the first draft of a book like yesterday, which was a great experience. But that took a lot of like, hey, I have a free weekend. Should I go do A, B, C, and D? Should I catch up on this show that everybody's talking about? No, it was like 2 straight months of I'm not leaving my house unless I have to until this thing is done because I want to do this as an experience. And that's really what like Harsh is saying is being willing to sacrifice on all of those fun things to keep working and improving and learning. And you have time between now and submitting your application to really sit down and work on something and make it great. You have a lot of opportunities between now and then to take 30 minutes out of your day when you'd be doing something else, messing around on Call of Duty or League of Legends or watching Severance, which is amazing. Uh, don't do those things. Take an hour, write your application thing. Do that every day until it gets better. Because every time you sit down, it's gonna get better. That's what you gotta do. And you're gonna hit some walls. This might be one of the walls that you hit. But if you come back next year and you've improved, you've gotten better, your momentum didn't stop, and you learned a lesson from it, we're all gonna remember that. And that speaks volumes about you as a writer. So never stop. There's no barrier too big to be surmounted. That's the best I could be at being inspirational. I'll stop.
Yeah. I mean, look, Hollywood loves redemption stories. There's a reason Rocky has had like 8 different movies at this point, right? Everything in, being a writer is failing. And then every time you fail, right, you get slightly better the next time, right? And so if you miss out on the program this year, right, it's not a bad thing if you got better the next year, right? Because everybody wants that uplifting story. One other quick thing I'll mention is, in addition to writing, make sure you're reading screenplays, right? Screenplays and teleplays are different than novels, right? When my oldest son was just a baby and he would only sleep when I held him in my arms, you saw him like run through this room earlier. Now he's like a giant 9-year-old, right? I literally sat while I was holding him, reading screenplays on my phone in John August We Can Read app, right? And at this point, I've read hundreds of screenplays just while I'm holding him, reading it to understand the craft, to understand what works well. I saw a question came up, someone saying, what are some good screenplays to read? Just if you Google by genre, right? What are the top, action screenplays? You will get all sorts of lists out there and just read them. If you want to write horror, read great horror screenplays, and you will find as you read more and more, you start understanding more and more of the craft, right? So that your own writing will get up leveled in kind of like a subconscious way as well.
Great advice. Well, thank you all so much for speaking on today's panel, and thank you everyone for attending. Applications open February 12th. They close March 16th. We recommend applying early if you can. We can't wait to see your applications. And again, thank you so much, Nicole, Harsha, Travis, for speaking today. I think that's all we have for you, but huge thanks to everyone for joining us tonight.
I'm so excited to
Good luck,
potentially work with you.
everybody. Yes. Good luck.